Thank you very much for inviting me here. If global power is indeed shifting from the west to east, although Dr. Larry Summers assured us yesterday that that was not the case, what kind of world does India want to be part of? And what kind of a world does India want to lead? The power shift actually is not anything new. We've been watching it happen over a period of time, certainly at least in the Indian context, certainly from the time that India opened up its economy. The Indian growth story is probably a little less dramatic than the Chinese, but just as impressive for slightly different reasons. India's high growth, high savings model does not come with a state-controlled economy or a single-party government. But in India, it comes with a solid parliamentary democracy, values of free speech, institutions, and rule of law solidly entrenched. Our growth is led less by the state and much more by the private sector, which in our view is much more sustainable. The dynamics of global power may be changing, but for India, the values remain the same. And that, in many ways, is what distinguishes the Indian growth from many others. Obviously, we've changed the focus of our foreign policy. For the first 50 years, India followed a policy of non-alignment, and we looked at the world in terms of our non-aligned status. Our new foreign policy is a much more complex mix of national interests and not exclusively focused on political issues. That makes the Indian presence a much more complex but a much more dynamic one in the world today. So what do we do differently today? I will just touch on three areas. In the area of nuclear non-proliferation, we've always believed that the NPT, which is the bedrock of the non-proliferation regime in the world, is unfair and discriminatory. I don't think we've changed that at all. But we've played by the rules. India's been a non-proliferation model in a way that has actually stood out in an environment where other countries around us have been proliferating madly. We can only name just a few in the region. In 2008, in a way, we were rewarded for this with a nuclear deal that India struck with the US. And the Nuclear Suppliers Group gave India a waiver for high-tech and nuclear commerce. I would argue that in many ways, quite apart from the changes brought about by the global recession that happened the next year, it is this deal that gave India put India on a trajectory that you will see manifest in the next few years, but it put India on the trajectory of what I call less as a factory to the world, but more as the new knowledge and information economy by removing the constraints of high-tech commerce from India. And it's not actually appreciated just what this deal has done in opening up technology and the Indian economy. India will become a member of all the non-proliferation arrangements in the world, from the Nuclear Suppliers Group to the MTCR. Not because we actually want to be inside the tent, but because we actually like the stringent rules for non-proliferation. So in a way, we find it troubling that a country like China would want to supply nuclear reactors to a proliferation country like Pakistan. In the global economy, we have seen and we have appreciated, and we are now a dynamic part of the G20, which has replaced the G8, which is all for the good as far as we see it. India is actually very close to the argument that the global fiscal imbalance was at the heart of the economic crisis. To that extent, while there is very little concern about what the Chinese yuan does to India, there is concern globally, and Indian economists believe this, that if China does not allow market-based exchange rates, the world will remain vulnerable to instability. For India, that is actually a much larger danger going forward, because continued economic uncertainties, we believe, breeds protectionism, and that is not good as far as Indian growth and a new Indian world and a new world order is concerned. We would like the quotas in the IMF to be changed, and in the past couple of years, India and China have worked together to bring about significant changes in the IMF quotas. We've worked together to change the Basel norms in global finance. But we also recognize in India that we still have a way to go. So while these changes are all for the good as far as India is concerned, we would also like to take the changes much more gradually. We don't actually want to wake up tomorrow morning and have an entirely new system, because we have benefited and we are still a part of the current system. India wants a seat at the UN Security Council, no secrets there. And I think Indian diplomats now are in intensive moves to get this particular seat. What we will see, though, is what we do see is a much more confident diplomatic initiative by India, which was not the case earlier. How does India look at the Asian power game? And in this, we get into complications, because we do have a difficult neighborhood. We have bilaterally a difficult relationship with China, although in multilateral forums we have been working together. But in many ways, we are playing the role of what I call, and what Sunil Khilnani used to call, the bridging power. You can see that in the climate change negotiations, where India in many ways helped bridge the differences between the developed world and the developing world. You can see that India is no longer the bloc in the Doha trade talks. While earlier we used to stop everything on the issue of agriculture, but food inflation has taken care of that. So while our bound rates, tariff rates are actually still remain high, our applied tariff rates are very, very low. So in fact, actually, we are engaged in almost free trade in agriculture. The difficulty is not in India anymore. We actually believe that the difficulty is in the US, and we are in top strategists, top economists in India will tell you that the relative decline of the US is actually not in India's interests. And I can only quote a foreign secretary who told a group of us last year that we want the new world order to be shaken, not stirred, because we are actually much more comfortable with what we call the Washington consensus. Thank you.